Hey everyone, and welcome. So today, we're going to dive into something that's at the heart of, well, pretty much everything. How do you take a big, messy, real-world problem and actually turn it into a clear, data-driven solution? It's a journey that's part detective work and part science, and it all kicks off with knowing how to ask the right questions. Let's get into it.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what kinds of problems data can even solve. Then, we'll get into the art of asking what are called smart questions, and, just as important, what traps to avoid. After that, I'll show you a 6-step playbook for pretty much any data project. And to wrap it all up, we'll see how it all clicks together in a real-world case study.
So where do we even begin? Well, before you touch a single spreadsheet or look at a single chart, there's one thing you absolutely have to do. Truly, deeply understand the problem you're trying to solve. I mean, it seems obvious, right? But you'd be surprised how often this step gets skipped. Data analytics isn't just about digging for random interesting facts. It's a powerful tool for tackling very specific challenges. And if you don't know exactly what that challenge is, your data is really just a bunch of numbers without a purpose. Think of it like a doctor. A good doctor doesn't just start running random tests. No, they listen to your symptoms first to diagnose a specific illness. Well, data analysts do the exact same thing, but for business problems. And that diagnostic toolkit is what we're going to open up right now.
And what's so cool is that almost any problem you'll face fits into one of these 6 buckets. You're either trying to make predictions, like forecasting next quarter's sales, or you're categorizing things like sorting customer reviews into positive and negative. Maybe you're spotting something unusual, like a weird spike in website errors. Or you could be identifying themes from thousands of comments, discovering connections between, say, a marketing campaign and user signups, or finding patterns in old data to see when people are most likely to buy. Knowing which bucket your problem fits in, that's half the battle. Okay, so once you know the type of problem you're dealing with, the real investigation can start. And what's the number one tool for any good data investigator? It's all about asking incredibly effective questions. And the absolute gold standard for this is something called the SMART methodology. It's a really simple but honestly super powerful framework that makes sure your questions aren't just kind of good, but that they will actually lead you to a useful, data-backed answer. Let's break this down real quick. S is for specific. It has to be super focused. So instead of asking, are our customers happy? You'd ask, what is the satisfaction rating on a scale of 1 to 10 for customers who used our new feature? See, that's also measurable. We can count it. It's action-oriented because that rating tells us if we need to make changes. It's got to be relevant to the problem. And finally, it's time-bound. For example, customers who used the feature in the last 30 days. A question that ticks all these boxes gives you a crystal clear target for your analysis. Now, knowing how to ask good questions is one thing, but knowing what not to do is just as important. Seriously, bad questions lead to bad data, and bad data can be an absolute disaster. The whole key here is to avoid bias and make sure your questions are fair. And this slide just perfectly illustrates the most common trap of all, the leading question. Asking, this product is too expensive, isn't it? Just pushes someone to agree with you. It doesn't actually invite an honest thought. A much, much better question is open-ended, like, what is your opinion of this product's price? That lets people give you all sorts of useful feedback, not just a simple yes. And it's not just leading questions you gotta watch out for. You also want to avoid those closed-ended questions that only give you a yes or no. Instead of, did you like the workshop? Maybe ask, what was your biggest takeaway from the workshop? You also have to steer clear of vague questions. Is the app useful? Is pretty worthless without context. A better one would be, how much time does the new feature save you each week? And finally, try not to ask unfair questions that make assumptions. Like, what do you love about our new design? What if they don't love it at all? At the end of the day, it really all comes down to this. Fairness is the foundation of good data. When your questions are fair, people can answer honestly, and that's when you get reliable feedback. That's where the real gold, the valuable insights are found. Okay, so we've talked about identifying problem types, and we've learned how to ask really great questions. Now, let's zoom out and look at the whole process from start to finish. This is the Data Analyst Playbook, a structured journey that takes you from a simple question all the way to a real-world action. This whole process has 6 clear phases. You ask the right questions to really define the problem. You prepare your data by gathering everything you need. You process that data, which means cleaning it up, getting rid of errors. Then you analyze it to find the story hidden inside. After that, you share your findings in a clear, compelling way. And finally, the most important step, you act on what you've learned to solve the original problem. See, it's a really logical roadmap.
All right, theory is great, but let's see how this playbook actually works in the real world. We're going to follow the story of a small business and see exactly how these 6 steps helped them solve a really critical problem.
So, meet Anywhere Gaming Repair. It's a small shop that fixes broken video game consoles. The owner was really eager to grow the business, but he was completely stuck. There are so many ways to advertise, and with a tight budget, where do you even begin?
This is where a data analyst named Maria came into the picture. She started right at phase 1, ask. She sat down with the owner and a few others, and they worked together to define the core problem. It wasn't just, we need more ads. The real specific problem was not knowing their target audience's preferred type of advertising. Getting that definition right focused the entire project. From there, Maria jumped into the prepare and process phases. She figured out the target audience was gamers between 18 and 34, collected data on their media habits, and then cleaned all that data up to make sure it was accurate. Once it was ready, she moved into the analyze phase, and that's where she found the story in the numbers, uncovering a key insight. Both TV commercials and podcasts were super popular with this demographic.
And here, in the share phase, Maria presented her findings. This chart was the clincher. Yep, both options were popular, but TV commercials came with a huge price tag. Podcast ads, on the other hand, they reached the same people but were way more cost-effective. For a small business on a budget, the data made the choice crystal clear.
And this is the final, most satisfying phase. Act. Anywhere Gaming Repair listened to Maria's recommendation and ran a 30-second ad on a few local podcasts. The result? 85 new customers in just 4 weeks. That is the power of a data-driven decision. They didn't just guess. They used a process to find a solution that actually worked. So as we wrap things up, let's bring it all back to you. From figuring out the type of problem to asking smart questions and following a clear process, you now have the fundamental toolkit. So take a look around at your job, in your community, maybe even in your own life. What problem is just sitting there waiting for the right question to be asked?